We are going to talk about how to sustainably pay off debt over a long period of time. A lot of times, what I hear from people is, Katy, we have $50,000 in debt, we have $80,000 in debt, we have $150,000 in debt. I'm not interested in eating beans and rice for the next 3 years. That's the messaging that we're getting from some people. You know who I'm talking about, a guru in a program that I actually support and stand behind. But sometimes it's just not sustainable. This idea of really just scaling back to bare bones, like completely cutting your budget back as far as possible, it's just not sustainable. So I'll be talking about this topic a little bit more later on. But 8 years ago, I competed in a bodybuilding competition, and the diet and the workouts were so brutal that after the show, I actually had developed like a bit of an eating, like a binging eating disorder, because I was so like I was starving. That level of workouts and diet was completely unsustainable. And not only was it not something I could maintain, but it like hurt my body. And I didn't know how to kind of go back to a normal way of eating or working out after that. Paying off debt is really similar. So you have, possibly months or years if you are really, really strict with your budget. You say no to everything. You bargain shop absolutely everything down like to the penny. There's nothing wrong with bargain shopping. I mean, I do that too, but you get to a point where when the debt is gone, or a lot of the debt is gone, you still don't know how to spend your money. You don't know how to enjoy your life. You don't know what's a priority. All you've been doing is paying off debt, and you have no idea how to spend money, how to be a good steward of your resources and finances past that point. And so I think a huge problem in the like debt-free financial industry is that we're not doing a good enough job of teaching people how to make good choices with their money, even when they're paying off debt, how to prioritize what's important, how to live, a healthy debt-free lifestyle in the midst of paying off debt. So that's what I want to talk about today. What are some of the things that you can do if you do have a long debt-free journey ahead of you? How can you make it easier? How can you make it more sustainable? How can you, do it in a way where when you do get to the end, you feel like you know how to handle your money and you're not just a crazy person throwing every single dollar you possibly can at any little debt with no concept of like how to enjoy your life at all, how to build in buffers to, plan for unseen emergencies, or just things that come up that we're not planning for because we're just actively throwing money at debt. I'm going to give you a few things to think about today, and this is a topic that we'll talk about again and again because it is so important to me right now. Okay, so number one is to get really, really super crystal clear on your priorities and make sure that you're spending money in those areas every single month. Now, of course, there's some gray area here. You have so many resources every month to use. And so if a priority is good health and you're spending $600 on supplements and $300 on a yoga membership, and you're buying a new Peloton, and you're buying, $1,200 worth of groceries for the healthy foods, like if that doesn't fit in your budget, then we have to kind of rework the plan, but still make sure that health is a priority and is reflected in your budget. So we're not going to sacrifice a gym membership if we're still going to Home Goods and just buying whatever rugs and lamps are on sale that month, okay? So we're going to keep the things that are priorities in the plan and take the other things out, not like say, oh, well, it's just a free-for-all, we'll spend as much as we want because this is a priority. Quick story about this whole priority thing. Something that I've been thinking about a lot lately is this idea of like, how do we quickly get to our priorities? Like, how do we quickly think about what's a priority? And this is something that happened to me in the last week. I'm celebrating my 20-year high school reunion. One of the things that we were asked to do was to record a 60-second, so 1 minute, video kind of sharing what we've been up to for the last 20 years. You guys, I I go live. I'm an aspiring YouTube star. Like I record videos. Like I'm pretty comfortable doing this kind of thing. And it took me a really long time to, and I'm such a rule follower too. So I was like, 60 seconds, you got it. Like I'm sticking to the 60 seconds. So many people were like 2, 3 minutes. It was pretty funny. I like put so much pressure on myself to get it to 60 seconds. But I think it was a really good lesson for me and something to share with you is this idea that when you have to consolidate 20 years into 60 seconds, you better believe that the important things are going to come up. You better believe that the priorities are what you're going to you know, as I was practicing this, I was sharing like where I went to college and what I majored in, what sports I played, what I did after college, my first job. And it was like, who cares? Like nobody cares about this stuff. I want to share about my family. I want to share about my 2 kids. I want to share about the business I started a few years ago. I want to share about how we survived, you know, COVID. And so really getting clear about your priorities, it's really easy, I should say, it's really easy to get clear about your priorities if you give yourself 60 seconds to share 20 years of your life, okay? So here's a cool activity that I challenge you to do if you're kind of struggling with, well, what should I be really focusing on spending money on as I'm paying off debt over the sort of the long haul? Picture the next 20 years. Right? And if you're like, well, I don't know what is going to happen. Like if you did know, right? If you did know for the next 20 years, what is your life going to consist of? What are you going to do? What do you want to do? What do you want 20 years from now to be able to say you did? And put it into 60 seconds. Who makes the cut? What makes the cut? What is most important? What are you going to say about the next 20 years of your life? And those are the things, the people, the experiences, the events that you should be prioritizing in your budget, in your plan for your money every single month until you're debt free. Because when you become debt free, you have got to have the practice, you have got to know how to spend money on the things that are actually important. Okay? Now, like I said earlier, this isn't a free for all. Like, well, you know, the kids are important, and so we're gonna buy them all the stuff, right? So not the stuff, right? Or we're going to sign them up for every single lesson that's available. So like we have to run this through a few different filters here. But if your family's important, what are we doing this month to make sure that we are honoring that? If our health is important, what are we spending our money on that supports health? If our, you know, if giving money to charity is important, or if, you know, music, live events are important. I don't know, like if friendships are important, if traveling to see family that lives out of state is important, how are we making sure that that is part of our plan on our debt-free journey, and that we are not feeling like we have to choose between working towards a better financial life and our life and what's important to us right now? Get super clear on your priorities. Don't make yourself wrong for wanting to include those in your plan over the next several months or years as you're paying off debt. Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2, have a budget that's sustainable. Have a plan for your money that is sustainable every single month. So again, I just mentioned my experience as a bodybuilder. And for 12 weeks, I was on a very strict eating plan, very strict workout plan. I spent a lot of money on a coach, so I did everything. Again, rule follower here. Like I did everything to a T. I didn't ask questions. I didn't complain. Turns out I should have, and that he would have like added more meals to my plan, and I would have been just fine to compete anyway. But anyway, like total rule follower. I was like, if this is what I'm supposed to do, I'm just doing it. I'm not complaining. I'm just doing it. And that was a sprint. Like that amount of discipline and focus, and like having that much asparagus in my fridge every single day for 12 weeks, like that was a sprint, not a marathon, not something that would ever be sustainable. And so when you think about your budget, if you are working on being debt free and you buy a lot of your meals out, you eat out quite a bit with your family, you get coffee out. I'm just using restaurants and kind of eating out as an example here. This could be for anything. If you do that pretty consistently and you turn around and you say, next month, nothing. We're not eating out anywhere. We're not doing anything. And the month after that, and the month after that. And you expect yourself to be able to maintain that kind of a change cold turkey overnight. Number one, some people are able to do this and they're fine with it. They learn how to cook from home. They find some great YouTube channels. They spend a little bit more on groceries. They notice a change. Not a big deal. But when it comes to sustainability, let's not all of a sudden overnight like change everything, cut everything back, and expect us to stick with it forever. Okay, again, like eating, if you say, well, I'm never going to eat like all of these items ever again, ever, that you might be able to do it for a month, but the next month and the next month and the next month, it might get a little bit harder. So I want you to have a budget that's sustainable, and I want you to think about this as, this is something that we need to be able to avoid future debt. We want to make sure that we're not adding any new debt to the plate, right? But if we can get through a month without using new debt, we've lived a month debt-free, essentially, right? Obviously, there's still debt to pay off. Obviously, you're still making payments on things. But if you're able to create a plan where you're navigating the month without bringing on more debt, without using your credit card, like that's a win. And that's something that is sustainable, okay? And we're including those priorities that we discussed. We are having open conversations with our family, with our spouse about, what's happening this month. What do we need to remember? What do we need to, make room for? And of course, you guys, there's going to be situations where you feel like, well, how does that work if I can't even make my minimum payments? There are certainly circumstances where you might need a month or 2 or 3 months of a sprint where you really are changing what you're doing drastically to sort of break the dam, right? Maybe you have a debt where the payment is really high, and paying off that debt is going to free up a lot of money for you, which is going to make the month easier to sort of breathe through and get through. Yeah, it might be a bit of a sprint to get through that. It might mean extra work or, cutting back on certain things or selling something. Or yes, like you can't just say like, well, if we just have a sustainable budget, we're going to pay off debt and be fine. I mean, it doesn't apply to everyone all the time. But typically what I see is that the people who are most stressed out and overwhelmed by debt kind of piling on, the fact is they have enough to get through the month debt free, but there's no planning, there's no communication, there's no real sense of what's coming in, what's going out. We're not planning far enough in advance, for those sinking fund items that I talk about all the time that come up throughout the year but aren't consistently month in and month out, so we don't think about them. Okay, so having a sustainable plan, that's the long-term goal, the long-term objective. Doing the sprint with, beans and rice and ramen noodles for the next 3 years, that's not sustainable. But you might have to go through a month or 2 or 3 to kind of get over the hump and then be able to make a more sustainable budget. So if this is something, if you're feeling like, yes, like what I really want is to be able to just stop using debt, and it might take us some time to pay off what we have, but it'd be really great to just feel like we don't need debt this month. We don't need new debt this month. Make sure that you grab my new guide. I just created it in the last month. It's called How to Break Up with Your Credit Cards, or 9 Ways to Break Up with Your Credit Cards Today. And it walks you through some specific questions that you answer. And I actually have sample answers to kind of help you jog your memory or just thought process. Like very actionable ways to stop using credit cards. And it's super helpful. It's something that I wish I had when I was ready to start paying off all my credit cards. So I've made that for you. I will link it below in the video, below the video in the comments. So grab that if that is something that you need. And the third thing. Okay, so far we have make sure we're clear on our priorities and that we're spending money on those things every single month within reason, right? Number 2, have a sustainable budget, something that doesn't feel like a sprint every single month because that's not sustainable. Number 3 is let's celebrate every single small win on our journey. So if you're someone who has maybe the only debt you have is a car and you owe $17,000 on it and you're like, well, it's going to take me like 4 years to pay it off, or maybe not. Maybe the bank says it's going to take 4 years, or the car lender says it's going to take 4 years, but maybe you want to do it in 2 years. So if you only have sort of one thing that you're working on, how can you celebrate along the way? Well, number 1, let's get a tracker, something where you can track what you're paying off right now. So if you're paying off a vehicle, have something that says like car loan or a picture of a car. I have a whole bunch of trackers. You can always comment and say like, hey, I'd love a tracker. Let me know which one you want. I can get that to you. But you could, put little like stars or hearts at certain points on the tracker so that when you get to that point, you do something to celebrate. It might just be like have a popcorn and movie night, or you add a little extra to your fund money the next month. I don't know, do something to celebrate and really celebrate. Like you are completely changing your life when you are working on becoming debt free. Nothing changed my life more than becoming debt free. And so celebrating those little milestones are so important. The other thing that you can do is anytime, and I keep looking down, I've got some notes right here. Another thing you can do is if you get through a month without using new debt, like if that's something that you need to work on, if you can get through the month without using new debt, celebrate that. If you get through the month where you actually checked in with your budget every few days and updated it in real time, maybe use EveryDollar or YNAB or some other app where you're keeping track of transactions throughout the month and watching your plan. If you do that for a solid month, celebrate that. If you and your spouse sit down and actually talk about money, freaking celebrate that. Okay, so don't feel like you're not winning until the debt's paid off. Literally every single day that you're on this journey and you're making progress and you're looking ahead, you're winning. I truly believe that. All you have is today. And so if you are starting to create these habits and behaviors and your mindset, your decisions for the day are, we're working towards being debt free today. And here's where we are on our journey. Here's the progress that we've made. And here's how we're celebrating today. Like that's everything. That's all you have. Is what you do today, what you decide to do today. And so get really comfortable celebrating and congratulating yourself on the progress that you are making. I've seen some really exciting wins in the group recently. I was going to post about this, but I'll tell you too. I had a client email me over the weekend. He and his wife have paid off $114,000 in the last year. I worked with them for 6 months last year, and they have paid off a lot of money. And granted, they have pretty decent income, but they took the pandemic by the horns and were like, well, we're not doing anything except paying off debt. And they didn't sacrifice what they were eating. They've got, animals. They did a little traveling, but they got focused and they decided this is what we're going to do. And so I encouraged them to celebrate because that's a huge win. So how are you celebrating today? What are you doing? Hey Barbie, how's your debt-free journey going? If you're just getting started, what are you going to be working on first? And make sure you're checking out other videos in this group if you are getting started on your debt-free journey. Because there's a lot more information about sort of that in here. If this is new to you, if you are just joining the group and you're wondering how to become joyfully debt-free, how to start on your debt-free journey, be sure to comment, let me know, send me a DM. Let's get you rolling in this group so I can share resources that will be helpful to you. One more time, if you haven't grabbed the free 9 ways to break up with your credit cards today freebie, you can get that. It's in the comments below. And I still have some spaces available for the 2-hour intensive with me in June. So if that's something that interests you, go ahead and send me a DM. I'll post a little bit more about that soon as well. But basically, it is just me and you getting your next 90 days completely mapped out and really figuring out where your money should be going right now, where it should not be going, and just getting you really crystal clear on what's the right next best step for you with your money, whether it's saving or paying off debt. Okay, guys, that is it for this Monday. I hope you have a beautiful week. Let me know in the comments if I can tag you in any videos, or if you have any questions. Grab the freebie, and I will see you again very, very soon. Bye for now.